Everyone, and welcome to the Football Outsiders Draft Live Stream presented by Underdog Fantasy. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, the president of the Desmond Reuter Fan Club, Derrik Klassen. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. I am a very new member of the Desmond Reuter Fan Club, but yes, if I can jump all the way up to president, I'll take it.
Right. He showed up just when the vote happened, and he became president of the Desmond Reuter Fan Club. And our special guest this week is Chad Reuter, who is an NFL analyst and researcher, draft analyst and researcher for NFL Media. Chad, I've been pronouncing your name wrong for 12 years.
Well, I'm sure I have also been pronouncing your name wrong, Mike Tanier, however how you say it.
No one knows. It's one of life's great mysteries. No one knows how my name is pronounced, including me. So, but thank you for coming on board. We are, of course, in the midst of free agency frenzy here. And yet we're talking about draft. So as we speak, who knows what could happen? Last week, Derek, when we were online, the Russell Wilson trade happened. This week, the Deshaun Watson trade might happen while we're on board. So, folks, if you are listening, and please join us and comment in the chat and be part of the show if you're watching live. That's the advantage of watching live as opposed to listening to us, later recorded. If you come on and tell us the Deshaun Watson trade happened, please say Deshaun Watson. Do not say Deshaun Williams or Frickin' Watson or whatever. Last week, thank you to the person who came on and told us that Russell Westbrook got traded. I know how autocorrect works. Appreciate the assist, but help us help you provide great content by giving us good information. And just a reminder that the all Football Outsiders draft coverage is presented by Underdog Fantasy. And you can use the promo code FO40, that's FO40, at Underdog to double your deposit up to $100. And keep your eyes peeled for new best ball tournaments that include 2022 rookies, their new Superflex games, and you can deploy your knowledge from mine and Derrik Klassen's and Chad Reuter's NFL draft research and analysis. Links to Underdog Fantasy can be found in the description of this video below. Go play with us on Underdog today. And again, we are talking draft here, but we're going to talk a little free agency, and I kind of put you guys on the spot. And I asked everybody to bring some writing materials with them, and I hope everybody knows. Get your number 2 pencils out, because we're going to do a little
former teacher. Yes.
Former teacher. As I was saying before, it's standardized testing season in addition to March Madness season and free agency season. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do, I want to put everybody on the spot. Nobody knows we're doing this. I want you to write your team that has been the biggest winner and your team that's been the biggest loser in free agency, etc., up until 11:55 p.m. Or 12:55 p.m. today. So write down top of your head, biggest winner, biggest loser, and we'll all hold them up at the same time.
Okay.
I'm going to do it as well.
Let me see.
I know what I want for loser. I don't know what I'm going to do for. I might write 2 losers, truthfully.
Okay. Let's see here.
So I would do the Jeopardy theme, but that's probably a rights issue.
I would imagine.
I would imagine. So I will hum Hey Jude instead, because there's no way that will get you in any trouble. Joey Sucks asked while we're doing this, Mike, how dare you remind me of the AP tests? The AP tests are in May, Joey. These are the state standardized tests in New Jersey, which means the world. Okay. And so I don't mean to remind you of those either. And Todd Singer asks, does the NFL hand out an award for most cap space? And will the Colts win that award again? Todd, clearly you've been in Lucas Oil Stadium, and when you look up, you will see the banners of all the times that the Colts won the cap space award. It's up there with their times they finished second in the AFC South, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we ready, guys?
I think so.
Okay, Chad is still
maybe. All right.
Okay. It's hard to win a cap space award, Todd, when you're paying for Carson Wentz. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hold them up. I am surprised that we went in 3 different directions. I was expecting different groups here. So I'm going to start with Chad. You're our guest. The winner was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the loser was the Cowboys?
Dallas.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Briefly, yeah.
This is the Dallas part is just immediately what happened like half an hour ago with Randy Gregory. They decided that they wanted to put in the extra language to and I can't really blame them for that. But the fact is that when you have a guy that is going to be liked by other teams, if you want him, then you can't do it. And he's done. I think he's becoming more mature and things like that. And so I think losing out on him because of that is probably not great. And then my winner was Tampa Bay because I'm counting Tom Brady returning in this because that's the whole game changer, not only for the Buccaneers, but also in the NFC. So I have to say that the Bucs are winners because of that.
Right. And just going back to negotiating with Gregory to put language in, it's the type of thing I can see the point of negotiating it.
Yeah.
Negotiating the contract. And and by the way, surprise, after we've gone to president.
Yes, that's a problem.
Yes, that is a problem. Derrik, what were your winners and losers again?
My winner was actually Denver, which I am also kind of looping in the Russell Wilson trade as like kind of part of free agency. Then I think even just the guys they signed made a lot of sense. I mean, we were just talking about Gregory, who stole Randy Gregory from Dallas, Denver, which I think is a really good signing for them. And then they also signed DJ Jones, defensive tackle from San Francisco. Really, really good, run stuffing piece in the middle that I think that front very desperately needed. So they're putting together some pretty good pieces.
And that's a good point because DJ Jones, that's a good example. They brought in Russell Wilson, and yet they're still adding. And that's the type of thing I didn't necessarily think they'd be able to do this offseason.
Right. And you lose Shelby Harris, and then they had to replace Shelby Harris up front. So getting Jones was a big deal. You don't see a lot of 6 foot tall 5 techniques, but I think he's got the skills to do that. If they decide to play him there rather than a nose tackle, it was a great deal for them to make that switch and get their quarterback.
Yes. And who was your loser, Derrik?
I had two. I had the Jags, which is like a pretty obvious one. They overspent for basically everybody, and that was a disaster. But my other one was the Colts, who just got mentioned in our class. And like the problem is they haven't done anything. The only thing they've done is sign Mo Alley Cox, which like they probably should have retained him. They're going to need one with Jack Doyle retiring, but like they have too much money to like. It sucks that a lot of teams, this is the time to overpay guys and stuff. But like after a certain point, if you're not overpaying anybody, you just aren't going to have a team that's good enough. And that's kind of the spot that the Colts are in again.
Right.
Indianapolis is not a free agent haven. It's not California. You have sales tax, so you're not Florida. You have to, and this is the same thing that here in Wisconsin we deal with Green Bay. You have to pay a premium for some of these guys, and it will mean you overpay some guys, but eventually you have to do that. Hopefully I don't know if they're going to try to get Jimmy G on a contract and they're waiting to see it and spend their money on that or what the deal is, but eventually you do have to pay guys.
Right. And this was a team that as of December, as of 3.5 months ago, it's like, oh, they are a playoff team.
Yeah.
And they're a team that thought they had forward momentum. And now it's like there's no direction. There's no direction to the franchise at all.
Right. Maybe Philip Rivers will come back after a year coaching. Maybe they're waiting to see if he can give him $25 million or something.
Yeah, Tom Brady, he came back. Philip Rivers can come back. Andrew Luck could come back. Anybody could come back. Now, Derrik, you mentioned the Jaguars. They were my big loser. I think we covered it. Joey Sucks does say, my favorite thing about the Jags is it feels like the same thing they do every few years. They come into the offseason, like 8th in total cap space, 7th in dead money charges. Then they spend a bunch of the cap space. And then 2 years later, they're eating the dead money charges. And in between, they got a tight end, who wasn't very good in the first place. So somebody on the internet was pointing out some of the guys like Julius Thomas. Some years ago. Remember that maneuver?
Yeah.
And this definitely feels like that this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny. We're asking for it both ways, right? We want the Colts to spend more money, and we want the Jags to spend less money. I mean, it's a hard, in between to kind of find, and you really appreciate teams like Buffalo that are doing everything. And that was the other team I was going to go with if it wasn't for Tom Brady. But really, like, you appreciate what Buffalo's getting. Guys that are probably bargains and to fill in the roster, and then they're filling their depth, and then they draft correctly and all that. So that's like team building right there, picking up pieces and making it all work.
Right.
I think the funniest thing about the Jags is just that each successive signing just seemed worse. Like when they signed Scherf, it was like, yeah, you got to build around Lawrence, maybe a little bit of money, but like, okay, you get it. Christian Kirkgill's like, that's definitely too much money, but they needed a guy. Okay, whatever. And it was like Evan Ingram. You're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Zay Jones, that's too much money. Like, it just kept getting worse.
Right.
Boya Olakun, like, he got like double what he should have got. It's just bizarre, I think.
And they cut Miles Jack, so they kind of make a lateral move that's expensive. Let's call it a lateral move that's expensive. Right, and Evan Ingram's a 1-year contract. So say it's like, you know what, we solved Evan Ingram's problems here. He just goes to free agency again. It's pretty much what the Panthers just did with Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we rented him for 1 year. Why?
Well, why? Mike, who are your guys? That's what I want to know. I forgot already. Who are your teams?
Oh, my loser was the Jaguars. The winner was the Chargers. I'm very impressed going back to the Khalil Mack trade and bringing in J.C. Jackson and Sheldon Richardson Day. And yeah, when we talk about spending money versus saving money, et cetera, the Chargers, like the Colts, are the team that has built, and Jim says so in the chat, you have to buy the Jack Tears before you can rearrange them. You have to have built something before you can then add to it in this particular case. And the Chargers did that. And I think one of the things that I came into this period with is Chargers got to fix their run defense. Well, they made their pass defense much, much, much better, and they did fix their run defense a little bit. So they went the opposite approach. It's like, you will not be able to pass against us. You will get sacked. We will shut down your secondary. Go ahead, run up the middle. 3rd and 9 to a Joe Judge and do a quarterback sneak against us. You are not going to beat us. And I'm surprised by that philosophy, but yet it works. It seems like it's going to work.
And it'll be even better now when you have pass rush. Like, all they had was Bosa.
Right.
Now that it's not just Bosa, you can actually get some pass rush. Because like Uchenna Nwosu last year was one of those guys where in 2020 it was like, wow, he's an awesome number 3. 2021, it's like, wow, he should not be starting.
Right. Everybody in their life gets to a certain job where they're no longer qualified for it. That's one of the rules of life.
Yep.
And that happens in football too, right? Where you get a guy that should have been a number 3 guy and becomes number 2, and it is what it is. But now that they've got the 2 guys off the edge, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And it all started when they didn't listen to all the people who said Justin Herbert wasn't any good, and they picked him and they surrounded him. And by the way, they also had excellent receivers around him that could make plays for him. So for all the teams that are like saying these quarterbacks are no good this year, please, and you have opposite. You have sometimes where a guy doesn't turn out too, and that happens. But if you like a quarterback, take him. That's the end of the story. That's the moral of the story.
And I think that's going to be the moral of our segment coming up in 2 segments.
Yeah.
When we get to talk a little bit about the Seahawks, but everybody gets promoted to a job they're not qualified for. I feel a little attacked by that as the host of this stream.
I'm self-attacking also. So,
let's move on now, because Lord knows all this landscape will change by the time of the end of the show. Let's move on to a segment we call PvP, not player versus player, but prospect versus prospect. And this week we're talking about running backs in the NFL draft. And we're talking about 2 guys, one of whom Derek wrote about at Football Outsiders in his film room, Breece Hall of Iowa State versus Kenneth Walker III of Michigan State. And we're going to pick our favorites here. And I'll start with you, Derek. We'll turn it over to you because you wrote about Breece Hall this week. Who's your favorite? Why? Give us the breakdowns.
I think I actually like Walker a little bit more. Funny enough, I think both of their biggest issues is they just can't pass protect. Like, neither of them can do it very well. And then I think stylistically as runners, they're just a lot different. But I think Walker brings, a little bit more explosiveness. I think Hall is like a very fluid runner. He's a very smart runner. But I think Walker is like pretty close to him in terms of vision and understanding like how to tempo runs and all that stuff. And then I think he just simply has more juice. So I think like Hall might have like a slightly higher floor because I do think he's a little more comfortable catching the ball out of the backfield. But I think Walker's explosive potential is just a little bit better. And if they're that close as prospects, I'll kind of take the upside in that scenario.
Yeah. I think Breece Hall is probably – this is close for me as well. I think Breece is just a hair better. And I think it's because of the way he can make – plays out of the backfield. You see him make some fantastic catches. To me, he's not exactly like Jonathan Taylor, but I think could be a similar player in that, maybe he doesn't have the most He doesn't have as much initial speed as Taylor, but I think in terms of breakaway speed, he's definitely got that. He's got the ability to spin off tackles and stuff in the open field, which is fantastic. I think he sees the field just fine. I don't think he's the loosest runner. I think he's a little tight, but again, if you're running a gap scheme, if you run it and you give him a hole, he's going to hit it. He's going to hit it hard. He can make people miss a little bit. Now, Kenneth Walker, all he did was be awesome this year. So there's nothing against Kenneth Walker here. He reminds me a lot of J.K. Dobbins, and who's really could have been a fantastic back this year if he didn't get injured. So I think he's got the low center of gravity. But yeah, it's kind of funny. He's sort of a strider, but he's a low center. It's an interesting running style. But again, he's got that speed, which you really like, and he sees a lot in the open field. So I like him a lot too. But I think he's just going to be a little bit less than Hall. And I think we were going to talk about whether one of these guys is a first round pick, right? That's kind of where we're going with this.
Yeah.
And I think the easy answer is no, because you don't see the pass protection, which is, something that they typically would look for in that first round pick, right?
Right.
But this sort of reminds me, like Hall sort of reminds me of like Rashad Penny, Sony Michel, these guys that we didn't really think were going to be first round picks. And then somebody ends up trading up for them. Mark Ingram is a perfect example of another one of these backs that, okay, he's big, he's fast. Yeah, he can't really pass protect, but we'll work on that. We'll send him out into the flat, and that's how he'll pass protect, right? That's his best pass protection is being out in the flat. He reminds me of one of these guys that goes a little bit higher than we think. So I'm not going to say he's definitely no first rounders, but it would take a trade up by like Atlanta or Houston, somebody like that late in the first round that really want this, running back. I think is going to make a difference in their offense.
I'm just picturing the Falcons trading up for a running back in the draft.
Right?
Now.
They would go nuclear.
It would.
With the system, you can kind of say, like, I want my Derrick Henry. But neither of these guys is – I guess Walker has some of that. I can turn a 5-yard run into a 50-yard run just by –
Hall has that too. I mean, that's why I think he's the more likely of the two – I'm not saying they should do that, but if we're looking for things that might happen either early, they may not go into the first round, but they may trade up early in the second round if they really want one of these two guys.
What do you think, Derek? Is there a first rounder in this batch?
I think I'm kind of with Chad where like it probably shouldn't happen. I think these guys are closer to like, the 40 to 50 range in terms of where you want to pick them. But I think Chad's absolutely right. If somebody is getting antsy heading into day 2, it's pick 29. Somebody wants to trade up.
Right.
I feel like it could totally happen.
Right. Yeah, because I look at the bottom of the draft, and just before we came on, the Bills went out and they grabbed a running back. So that's a team that we normally look at and say, we always like mock drafting to the Bills that they're going to take a running back. It's slipping my mind at this moment because it was like 10 minutes before we came on. But
J.D. McKissick?
J.D. McKissick, good all-purpose player, good guy for a committee there. Yeah. So so that takes them out. I just can't – I'm just imagining this team trading up for either of these guys. Is there a number 3? I mean, there's a number 3 back. Is there a third back that belongs in this conversation?
To me, I think James Cook will be a late second round. He's the one guy that I think would be a late second round pick, but I think that's very specific to like Kansas City. Somebody that really wants speed, wants more of a receiver, running back kind of thing. So other than that, I think really the depth is going to be in rounds 3 and 4 this year. And there'll be some really good players, but I think really it's Walker and Hall in the second round, late first, and then maybe Cook. I could just see him going to the Chiefs, real late in the second.
I think I agree. Like Hall and Walker feel like the only like complete runners. We mentioned like some of their pass protection stuff is not there, but like they have enough in their running back toolkit that they can do everything as a running back. A lot of the other guys, like you said, they're good 3rd, 4th round players, but they're kind of pigeonholed into certain things. Ty Algier is not going to be fast enough to be like a legit back. James Cook is kind of more like a only pass catcher kind of guy. So I think you're absolutely right. Like probably nobody else is in this tier with these guys.
Well, it's interesting. Cook could be like a Jamal Charles. And I think, he was a little bit underrated coming out of Texas in terms of his ability as a runner and not just like an all-purpose athlete kind of guy. So I think, again, I just make the connection with the Chiefs there and Cook. But again, Algier and Jerome Ford, and there's going to be a ton of guys in the 3rd and 4th round that are going to be solid backs.
There's lots of little third downy guys.
Yeah.
Lots of really good little third downy guys. And then there are some like second tier, he joins the committee all-purpose guys. I'm going to throw the DraftKings odds at you guys real night. For the first running back selected, nobody's putting odds on a running back going in the first round, which probably tells us something.
Yeah.
First back selected right now at DraftKings, Breece Hall at -200, Kenneth Walker III at +175, and then Isaiah Spiller at +650. So that's a big drop, and then it gets goofy after that. So Hall at -200 and Kenneth Walker at +175.
Yeah.
I mean,
that kind of sounds about right, because like all the stuff that Chad says, like, athletically they're both really good, but like Hall is just bigger and like he kind of has more of the pass catching element, so it makes sense that he's probably going to be the first one off the board.
Yeah, typically the smaller guy is not going to be the first round pick unless you're, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that hasn't really turned out that great. Typically that late first round, early second would be the little bit bigger back. And like, can you imagine like 15 years ago, a guy like a 5'11" back with 4.4 speed? He'd be a top 10 pick. He'd be a top 10 pick. And we're not even in near that conversation.
2 Big Ten featured backs here. And like, we're old enough to remember. Yeah, that's the middle of the first round. They're both gone.
Right.
Right. That's what the NFL coveted. And now we're talking, early second round. Maybe I'll put +175 on Kenneth Walker being able to get out there and get drafted first.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Isaiah Spiller till at least the mid 3rd round, probably maybe not the 4th round. So I think
I agree on that too.
Yeah, I think that's going off name more than anything else.
And in day 3, I just rake on some of these younger guys, some of the guys who really blew up at the Senior Bowl, like so many 5'10", 200-pound speedsters.
Yeah.
Beatty from Missouri and some of these other guys, and just like grab them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, people think that, some people just think that running backs don't matter, but I think the point is that there are so many talented backs that want the ball. That's why their price goes down in terms of when they get drafted more than their talent level.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's why we see so many 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys really make it. It's because there's so much talent at that position, and with the injury history and all that stuff as well. There's just a lot of talent. There's no reason to use a 1st round pick on a guy like that.
Right. It's not that they're no good; it's that too many of them are good, and you can just
right. And they get injured, which is part of the deal. Both it's both.
Right. Now we're probably going to be talking about James Cook more in a moment or two, but there are a couple questions from the group here. Todd Singer asked, will wide receiver David Bell's poor combine performance significantly affect where he gets drafted? He has sort of fallen out of the names of the big guys in the last week or so. And my inclination is, yes, he is slipping a little bit.
Yeah. I think he was a guy figured to be a late 2nd round pick, because you saw on tape he wasn't the most athletic guy. But to me, like, he's James Jones. He's a guy that's going to be a really good number 2 receiver for a long time in the NFL. And honestly, last year without a combine, we had all these pro day numbers. And Amon-Ra St. Brown may have run very similar 40 to David Bell. And I think he's going to end up being a similar player. So if he falls into the 4th round because teams aren't paying attention to how good of a player he is, then somebody's going to get a really, really good bargain. But I think he should go round 3. But it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up at round 4 at this point.
Right.
I think that's the thing, is like, you watch him and his game was never dependent on athleticism, really. He was more of a just smart, tough guy, willing to throw blocks. He had very strong hands, all that jazz. So like, the fact that he's not an athlete, like, he tested pretty bad, but it was never dependent on him. Like, that wasn't his meal ticket to being as good as he is. So I think, if he's still there in the 3rd round, you just take him anyway, even if he tested like that.
Right. If we're talking about late 3rd, early 4th, we are talking about a slip.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
yeah,
a slip, but not, anybody who watched him knew he wasn't going to run. Before the combine, I said, this is a guy that could make a lot of money if he proves people wrong, but he didn't. He confirmed what everybody saw. So that's what he's going to end up being. And he's still a heck of a football player. I'd take him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another question from the group. Jim Stettschulte. Could a team look at trading up into the late 1st for a running back, in part because the extra year on the rookie contract could mean not extending the player's contract as their usefulness lowers? I get the impression that this impacted some of the Clyde Edwards-Helaire type selection. I think J.K. Dobbins. I almost said J.K. wrong. J.K. Dobbins was later in the first round.
He was a second round, late second round. Yep.
Oh, he was late second. Excuse me.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's part of the equation at the end especially because that fifth-year option is not Saquon Barkley expensive.
Right.
When you're picking late in the first, so you get a little bit more control. Maybe you get the one more year of usefulness out of the guy, and then you can just draft the next guy.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And it will be interesting to see if somebody makes that. And Kansas City, Green Bay, Detroit for sure. These teams are going to be looking to get out of the end of the first round as well. So they'll be willing to, for a fourth round pick, probably move down a few spots into the second and, not want to pay that first round premium for a second round guy. So it could happen.
Right.
To me, it's honestly a little bit less about like the contract stuff and more just I feel like teams that are trading into the back end of the first round for a running back are just in like win now mode, and they want to make sure they get their guy. The Patriots have done it when the Chiefs were doing it. They were like, we're already great. Like we can trade a little bit of whatever to just get this guy. I don't think they were thinking that much about his contract 5 years down the line. They just wanted as many guys they thought were good players to play with Mahomes right now. I think that's really all it comes down to.
Right. And we didn't see a lot from Clyde Edwards-Helaire so far. We didn't see much from Sony. Yeah. Sony does what Sony does, and he was like a helpful player on that. But I feel like a fifth round pick could have been that helpful player for the Patriots. Doesn't look like necessarily the best strategy moving forward.
Well, and that's exactly what the Saints thought when they went up and got Mark Ingram, gave up a future first round pick, right? But right. I'm not coming up with a whole lot of examples in my mind where the running back was the difference between a team making it and not making it. Certainly no different than like Aaron Jones with the Packers and some of these later picks becoming that guy that could really help the offense. But what you're saying is right, Derek, in terms of a lot of teams are still thinking we're one player away. Let's go get that one player. And that rarely turns out to be the case unless you're talking about, of course, Tom Brady or like the, unicorns. But other than that, it doesn't typically, pay. The difference between running back number one and running back number two is usually not that great in the grand scheme of things. So trading up to get them, you just end up giving up some draft capital in the process.
Awesome. Now on to our next segment. Of course, we know this time of year, everybody is looking to college athletics. Everybody is looking on campus. And the reason why everybody is looking on campus this week is because of pro days. That's the main thing that's happening in college athletics this week is pro days. And look at them all. What a beautiful graphic. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's
over
fantastic.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Right. So this is not a bracket. This is a pro day thing here. And the question I put forth to you guys, and Chad, I'm going to start with you since we already got a little preview of this.
Yeah.
Which pro day are you most interested in moving forward from this week?
Well, typically, a place like Georgia, you've seen all these guys at the combine already. So, there's not a lot of secrets coming into the pro day, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this year, only one guy did the short shuttles and the three cones from the 14 people that were at Georgia. And that was Travon Walker. Of course, he was excellent and, he looked fantastic. But so many guys didn't do these other drills. And a lot of them ran the 40, not all of them, but a lot of them. But, the 40 is one thing. I want to see the short area agility of Lewis Cine, the safety. I want to see, Devontae Wyatt, how he does, Quay Walker. A lot of these guys that are really fantastic players, I want to see some of the results from that and not just a 40-yard dash. So that's kind of what I'm looking for at the Georgia Pro Day.
It's practically Combine 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Okay. Championship Boogaloo, so to speak here, because there were so many Georgia players. I'll tell you something on the interview floor. The Georgia media was just swarming them every time. And every question was about the championship season, which I get that. But can we talk about the NFL? This is the combine. And they were looking back at that. But the guys who ran well. But you mentioned somebody, Lewis Cine. He ran well. And I think he's jumped up in a lot of our perceptions. He's now in the FO40, for example, based on that. But I have a hard time evaluating a safety on a defense like Georgia because, he's back deep, the ball snapped, and everyone's dead. And he's just
well, with Cine, he was a guy that was often used in coverage. And he would cover not just like the big, oaf tight end. He's on receivers. So he did a lot of that kind of stuff. So that's why he's been a top 50 pick for me for most of the year. But on the on-field workout, I didn't always see the kind of short area movement that I would have expected in a guy that takes that kind of coverage. So again, I just want to see in those kind of tests how he does, and if there's a red flag there, or if I, I saw one workout at the combine, whether that doesn't mean anything or not. So that's why I like, even in a guy like that who's really talented, I want to see these other tests and see how it works.
And Quay Walker was another guy who was in coverage a lot.
Yeah.
As a linebacker.
Nakobe Dean. I got to talk about Nakobe Dean because he didn't do anything at the combine.
That's right.
And this is a guy that needs to work out really well to be a first-round pick.
Right.
And watching his tape, you wouldn't think that. But he's a guy that is not very tall. He's not very big. Mm-hmm. And teams aren't sure of how purely athletic he is. Now, if you watch him on the field, he attacks plays and he's always around the ball. So he's a heck of a player. It's not about that. Right. It's just like, does he have the athleticism to be like a top 20 pick? Nick Bolton from Missouri dropped he tested fine. He dropped all the way down to the bottom of the second round. The Chiefs got a bargain with that guy because he's 5'11", 230 pounds. So Nakobe Dean needs a really good workout to prove to people that he's as athletic as he is a good football player, and that'll maximize his draft stock. He's going to be a good NFL player regardless, but this is what we're talking about here, to try to make as much money up front as you can.
One other guy, George Pickens, he did run at the combine. Do you know, is he doing a full workout at the pro day? Are we going to?
Yeah, I'm not sure how he's coming back from the injury, if he's going to do everything. My guess is that he's going to do everything. A lot of the people didn't do 3 cones and short shells just because of the way that the combine was formatted this year with all this stuff on one day. So I don't think it was a matter of injury with him. I'm expecting to see everything, but I haven't heard anything officially.
Excellent. Let's move over to you, Derrik. And of all of these pro days, which one did you select?
I picked Texas A&M. I do some stuff over at Bleacher Report, and I have all the front 7 guys, and it feels like half of the front 7 guys in this class are from Texas A&M. And so I picked him for a couple reasons. One, DeMarvin Leal did not test very well at the combine. He ran very poorly, and a lot of his other drills were not that great. And he was a guy who, his tape is not that good, and he's very dependent on being like this athlete who, like, you can figure it out with him. So then when he doesn't test very well, that's pretty concerning. Yeah. So I think he needs to have a really big day. Mm-hmm. And then they have a handful of other guys that just didn't do anything at the combine, like Tyree Johnson and Michael Clemens, 2 defensive ends, guys that are like, very end of day 2, early day 3 types. They just didn't test. I think one of them did like a jump, and that was it. But I would like to see how they go. Tyree Johnson in particular, he's like very much a speed bend guy. So really want to see him run and do like the 3 cone and stuff like that. And then another one, Jaden Peavy, their defensive tackle, did not test very well at the combine. So hopefully he can bump those numbers up a little bit.
And this is just a bad post-combine time to be a front 7 guy, particularly an edge, and not to have gone out and performed lights out, because there's so much competition and so many players blew it up at the combine.
Yeah. And Leo, like you said, Derrik, his tape was not great. I put him in the 3rd round of my first mock draft, and I got some blowback from that. I'm like, we have these guys every year that test like that don't play to their potential, but some of them, like Calais Campbell, for example, I mean, some of these guys turn out to be pretty good players down the line. So he's worth a shot at some point, on day 2, probably. But you're right, he could use a better outing this week, and maybe that'll help his cause a little bit.
Yeah, and before I do mine, none of us picked Michigan. It's just because we're fine, we're good.
We're good.
I saw what I needed to see from Hutchinson. I'm still a little bit lower on him than other people because I don't think he bends very well on tape. But when you run a 6 whatever 3 cone, it's like, okay, well, that's that.
It's so hard to tell with some of these guys because they're not asked to do certain things that they probably can do. And Hutchinson's one of these guys that just took on his tackle, was looking, he was very patient against the run. So he wasn't always just trying to bend the corner and get the quarterback. But when you saw he needed to get to the quarterback, he got there. So, and Ajabo, we know what he is. Daxton Hill, we know what he is. Yeah. So I think, we're good. They've got good players and,
Right. So Michigan fans, we are not snubbing you.
No.
You guys did all you needed to do. We are so impressed that we don't need to see any more. I'm guessing Hutchinson's just going to walk around in a compression tee. I don't think they're going to ask him to do
I would think.
Anyway, so I picked Minnesota. And, of course, there are two guys I look at. One I'm standing for a little bit, and that's edge rusher Boye Mafe. Impressive at the Senior Bowl. Some of the things that we've been hearing about how he's going to test. He didn't do very much at the Combine. Expected to test lights out. And a guy who high energy player, looks like he can sneak into that conversation, into the second or third tier of edge rushers below the Thibodeau and Hutchinson line, obviously, but somebody who can make a name for himself there. And I really want to see his workout numbers.
Yeah.
Other guy I'm looking at, of course, we're all looking at is the big guy, and I got to get his name right. Daniel Fa'alele.
Very good. Very good.
Fa'alele. I looked it up before I came on here. That is the mammoth offensive tackle from Minnesota. I believe he came in at 384 pounds at the scouting combine, largest combine weight of the last 20 years. And I've got him somewhere between a high second round pick and completely undraftable.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing
it's just a matter of the team, right? Like Tennessee, right. if they liked Isaiah Wilson, they probably like Fa'alele, but they're not going to take him at the end of the first round. It'd be more like a late second round, whatever. No matter how he tests, he probably will put up Orlando Brown type numbers in some respects, but I don't think it really matters. I think at some level, right tackle is there to take up space, and most quarterbacks in the NFL get rid of the ball quickly enough that you're not going to have to worry about second, third moves and stuff like that. So I think most teams are okay giving this guy a shot. They're not going to use a first round pick on him. But I think they say he's just massive. He's got enough strength to overwhelm a lot of smaller defensive ends. And honestly, like the better defensive ends in the NFL that line up on that side, most rookie tackles aren't going to win against them anyway. So I think they'll be fine. And even if he doesn't test that great, somebody will probably still take him in the third round just because of that pure size.
Right. And by the way, he takes up space. When you watch Minnesota film, it looks like there's like this much space. And it's like two guys worth of space, and that's Daniel Fa'alele. My concern, I loaded up the combine, the heaviest players at the combine, and the name that came up right below him was Mike Williams. Remember that Mike Williams from the Bills?
Yeah.
And I kind of got the shakes a little bit. And some other names like Stockcar McDougal were on that list.
Right.
And it was very much a list of guys who could not maintain conditioning and health at the NFL level. Leonard Davis was on it.
Yeah.
Longtime Cowboys and Cardinals guard. And I would think that's kind of like the ceiling. I want to see him come in and make sure we're still at 384 pounds, that we're not suddenly getting numbers like 391 showing up 2 weeks after the combine and things like that, because that's absolutely.
Well, you've got guys like Max Starks who had a long career. He was never like if you don't like Stocker McDougal was like 16th overall, and Leonard these Mike Williams was like 5th or something like that. It's a different time. And I think he, as third round pick, guy that can pick a little bit later, work him at right tackle. Some people want to kick him into guard. I don't think he's got that flexibility. I don't like him out there. I think he's really a tackle. But if you get him at the right price, he could turn out to be something for you. And I love Mafe, by the way. I've loved him all year. It's great. I hope he tests off. He could be like this year's Dafe Owe that goes late in the first round, out of the Big Ten. That's the kind of guy he could end up being.
Awesome. Let us move on to our next segment, our favorite segment. It's called Fix the Franchise. And this time last week, this team was not going to get mentioned on the FO Draft live stream because they did not have a first-round pick. And then all hell broke loose in the real world. And this week's Fix the Franchise is the Seattle Seahawks. Suddenly back in the first round, suddenly without a quarterback, suddenly rebuilding, suddenly on the clock early in the draft. And I kind of threw some needs out there. I think the first need there is quarterback. I don't think that surprises anyone. And
I'm a Geno Smith stan, so I don't know that I agree with you, but I'm joking. I'm glad you didn't say I'm a Drew Lock stan, because I don't think that's not even fun.
That would have been real grounds for concern. Geno Smith, right? I could take.
Right. I've encountered Geno Smith stans, and I get it. Drew Lock fan club the Drew Hive is gone.
I don't blame him for I can't blame him for getting him back as part of the.
Well, yeah.
If that's what it takes to get it done, just yeah.
Right.
Right. They got Noah Fant and Shelby Harris and another guy.
Yeah.
Right. Linebacker. I put defensive back. I know they re-signed some guys here. I had safety on there a couple days ago. Just need, and offensive line is a perennial need for the Seahawks and every other team. And I understand why Doug Farrar was unavailable to be a guest today. Doug is busy standing for Gardner Minshew all over the internet today. So
That's right.
Yeah. So keep Doug and his interesting choices and quarterbacks in your thoughts and prayers. We're going to have some interesting choices for the Seahawks in a moment, because we were all asked to do a 3-round mock draft for the Seattle Seahawks to try and do something with them. And I'm going to start with Chad's mock draft because I think it's full of surprises and excitement.
Is it?
And I believe so. Chad, Matt Corral, number 9 overall. Help me.
Well, word on the street is that they like Matt Corral as a quarterback. So, look, if they're looking for a guy that can, if they're looking for a guy with some athleticism that can unload the ball quickly and operate an offense, I could see why they would like him. I do, and he's got a little bit of that, a little bit of swag to him. Would I pick him that high? Probably not. But we're not, Seattle has made many picks over the years that I would not make. So this is one of those that I think will be very interesting to see if they pull the trigger on this early. You can't trade Russell Wilson and then not get the quarterback in the top 10. You can't. You can't do that. And, Deshaun Watson, he's out the door. 49ers aren't trading Garoppolo into the division. The Jameis Winston, I don't think is even in the conversation. So they got to get a quarterback. So it's going to be Corral, or they're going to have to trade up to get one. And I wouldn't put that past Seattle either. If they love Kenny Pickett, for example, and they think he's the kind of guy that they want, a guy that can operate the offense, get the ball out. If they like him, I would not be surprised if they give up some of the picks that they got for Russell Wilson to go up and get a guy like Kenny Pickett, because they, ownership is going to be like, okay, we'll sign off on this, but you guys got to get it done. You got to show me that there's something here. So if it's not Corral, they got to get somebody early.
So I first thing when I saw you put this in the group chat, this is not based on you're hearing a lot of Corral is going to go that high in NFL circles. This is like based on the logic that this is a fit for the Seahawks and a need for the Seahawks.
Right. And, this year's quarterback class is so weird because, even more than usual, people are, putting these guys down as not being able to play in the NFL. And that happens every year. Right. Like Justin Herbert was put in 20th in mock drafts after the combine. I mean, every year people love to hate quarterbacks. This year is even so. So a guy like Matt Corral wouldn't surprise me if he ended up going late first round, early second round. And a lot of these guys are in that situation. But I think in the end, teams will say, we got to have a guy, and we got to have a quarterback on a rookie contract. If we're not going to get the Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, if we don't have those guys, then we got to do that. So that's why I think Corral is in play here.
Right. And
I mean, I love the logic of taking quarterback at 9, because you're right. When you trade up into that spot, like that's what you have to be doing, right? Unless you're just punting on the year, which is probably not going to happen. I feel like they've done too many other things that suggest they're not doing that. If it's Corral, good luck, Seattle fans. I'm sorry.
And the other thing is, quarterbacks are rarely drafted in the order in which their careers turn out.
Right.
So, like for example, if they were wanting Malik Willis, why would they have traded Russell Wilson? I mean, like there's some guys that you can see. I can see why they would take a guy that they think they can just get the ball out quickly, or throw it away, or run, and not, if they want the guy just to run there. That's why I think they probably like Kenny Pickett too, but they're not going to get him at 9. So, again, it wouldn't shock me if they moved up. And then Sam Howell, I don't know where he fits with these guys either. He actually, to me, he's actually very much like Russell Wilson. And so I think they're probably not going to have interest in him for that reason. Short guy, high Gets the ball out high, even though he's pretty short. He can make a lot of plays downfield. That's Russell Wilson. I can't imagine they have interest in him.
Interesting. Well, Corral's going to show up in mine in a moment. Going to your other, Ebiketie is a little bit less controversial, I would say, at the 40th overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, they need 3-4 rushers if they're going to make that change. So it's pretty obvious he's a rush linebacker, very typical second round guy in that sense. So really talented guy who's going to probably be very productive for them in that role. I don't think he's going to go in the first round. You never know, but I think he's a good second round fit for a team. Right.
Now, Tyler Smith, left tackle for Tulsa. Do you project him there, or
he could play anywhere on the line? He's so raw. I think a lot of teams will be scared of him, but Seattle is not scared of taking guys like this. So I mean, I could really see them taking him in the second round and trying to develop him, and just looking at his raw tools and say, okay, we can play him at guard, we can play him at tackle. They've done this many times over the years with different guys from James Carpenter to name the Seahawks pick over the last 10 years,
right?
And he's a perfect example of one of these guys.
They're a little too unafraid to do this over the last 8, 9, 10 years.
I know, but
but they probably will again.
That's right. And he's got a lot of talent. I mean, the potential is really there with him, but he needs a lot of work. So we'll see how that turns out in the end.
By the way, I grabbed Tyler Smith's bio off of Tulsa very quick. Tulsa has wonderful bios for the players. Just so everyone knows that his favorite movie is Avengers Endgame. His favorite sports movie is Friday Night Lights. And here's my favorite. One person he would most like to meet, dead or alive, would be Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general considered to be one of the greatest military commanders in world history, born in 247 BC. So this young man wants to meet Hannibal Barca. He could meet Pete Carroll.
Yeah, right.
That seems more reasonable.
A reasonable facsimile of the great Hannibal. I like, by the way, Tulsa made sure they explained who Hannibal Barca was. I guess in case they thought we meant Hannibal from Silence of the Lambs or from the A-Team. So we got a good explanation there. And tell me a little bit about Jalen Armour Davis.
Yeah, he's a talented Alabama corner who got hurt this year. So he's a little bit under the radar, but he tested very well. He plays the ball really well. He's got the size. I think he would be a very good corner. Re-signing Sidney Jones, I don't think has any impact on this. They need depth at that spot. And I think Armour Davis is a guy that, if he's still available early in the third, would be a really good pickup for somebody.
Grab a defensive back, grab a cornerback.
Exactly.
A deep draft. All right. So you went with Matt Corral. We're going over to Derrik. Derrik has a quarterback at number 9, and his choice may surprise you, viewers and listeners.
Teased a little bit with the opener, but I went with Desmond Ridder. I think he's the best quarterback in the class, and I think he's probably going to go later than pick 9, unless Seattle takes him. But I think he's probably the best quarterback in the class. They need a quarterback, and he's very, very different from Russell Wilson, which I think is actually kind of why it makes a lot of sense. He's definitely a guy who's going to play in structure. He's going to stay in the pocket. The ball's going to be out on time, all that jazz. So he's like, I feel like the fact that he's the anti-Russ is actually why this makes a lot of sense to me.
And he's anti-Russ in terms of like his play style, because it is a pretty structured style. But he is the pro-Russ in terms of you come in getting somebody who's very game ready, which is what Russ was 10 years ago, and is going to seize the reins without too much trouble.
Exactly. 4 years of experience. It's a legit offense. Like, they run a lot of NFL concepts, so I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. Like I said, like you see, he's very comfortable in the pocket, progressing. Like you said, he's going to be able to come in and start, I think, day one pretty comfortably.
Right. Do you have other quarterbacks being off the board at this point, Derrik? Or is it just like this is the guy?
I assume Willis will be gone. Also, like kind of Chad mentioned earlier, I feel like because Willis is kind of in the Wilson, like they have a lot of overlap in their traits. Like maybe they just don't even want a guy like Willis because it's so similar. But I think Willis is probably off the board. Maybe the Panthers will do something insane and take Pickett, but I feel like Willis is the only one I would think for sure is gone at this point.
Right. I personally, by the way, still think that Deshaun is going to be in Carolina. I've kind of written them out.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we'll see. We will see in the next, I don't know, 10 minutes or 36 hours, but we'll know. Before we continue, I want to get to Jim's question because it kind of goes back to what Chad was saying too. With their needs, if the Seahawks are targeting Corral, wouldn't they be well served to trade down into the 20-ish range? Thoughts?
Well, you can't. I mean, if you're looking for a quarterback, you can't trade down and assume a quarterback's going to be there. I mean, you can't do that. That doesn't happen. If you're willing to take one of 3 or 4 quarterbacks, then maybe that's the case. But you can't trade backwards. The one thing that could happen is they have those 2 late, those 2 early second-round picks now. So they could trade up into the bottom of the first round to get a guy who's available late if that's what happens. But honestly, like I said, you just traded away your franchise. I would have a hard time believing they're going to take Ahmad Sauce Gardner or, a guy like that and ignore the quarterback position in their case. I don't listen to anybody who says these quarterbacks can't play because I've seen year after year after year after year that people say that kind of stuff. And then they end up being just fine. Mac Jones isn't a first-round pick. He is a first-round pick, and he did all right. So you need the quarterback, and so you can't really assume anybody's going to be there if you trade backwards.
All right. Moving back to your picks here. Leo Chenal, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now, this is a big inside linebacker with like a sort of a perpendicular line of scrimmage go game. If I nailed him correctly, Derrik?
I mean, pretty much. He's kind of in the Hightower-ish mold. I think he tested better than it seemed like he was going to, just for a guy that size. I mean, he's like almost 260. But yeah, he's like a really good downhill thumper. Like he just comes downhill with a lot of confidence. He's not a guy who's afraid to go mix it up, scrap it up. He takes on blocks incredibly well. I think he's probably the best at that in the entire class, truthfully, in terms of just like deconstructing blocks, knowing how to do it in certain situations, whether you need to backdoor, take it on, half man, whatever. He's really, really, really good about all that stuff. And then honestly, I'm not entirely sure he's going to have like the full athletic toolkit to be like a great coverage linebacker, but he's actually really, really smart in his zone coverage. He understands like, what kind of angles he needs to be taking, what windows are behind him, all that jazz. So he might not be able to, run with everyone, but I think the fact that he's going to be really smart in zone coverage, has all the run defense skills, like he's not going to be peak Bobby Wagner, but I feel like you can kind of fit him into that mold and he'll be good to go.
That's why I was saying like a Bobby Wagner surrogate. I'm a little worried about a guy who's not necessarily great in coverage going to the Seahawks at linebacker.
Like I said, he doesn't have the speed to play man-to-man, but I think if they do a lot of their zone match stuff, I think he'll probably be just fine, honestly.
It's going to be interesting to see what teams, because his workout was phenomenal. All of his different tests were that he doesn't necessarily play to that in all cases, but he's a Wisconsin guy. I'm here in Madison, and very smart guy. To me, like he sticks with the Patriots. Like I just think he's a Patriots guy. So I have him just going a little bit lower in the second, but it wouldn't shock me if New England went up and got him, much like they did Hightower, back in the day. So that's a really good fit. He's a really good player. He's going to be he doesn't. The one thing teams are going to look at, he's got 31 inch arms, which is not great length for any any kind of player really. Right. But Micah Parsons didn't have much more length either. So. And Chenal can get after a quarterback. So I think some of that will be made up for that in other ways. But he's a really good player.
I think him more as like the interior gap blitzer than somebody you're going to stick on the edge that often.
That's right. Yep.
And Purdue athletic director Todd Singer does point out that Chenal was the best player in the field when Wisconsin beat Purdue last year. So that says something coming from our resident Boilermaker expert here in the chat. It seems like, Derrik, you are drafting for Pete Carroll. You are getting guys he likes here, because I look at Drake Jackson as like a really big Leo, like the king size Leo. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think he would fit in perfectly for what they've asked Carlos Dunlap to do, actually. And Dunlap's obviously an older guy. He's going to be I don't think he's out the door this year, but he's going to be pretty soon. He's an older guy. Drake Jackson, I feel like my take on him is that like if USC had a legitimate strength and conditioning program, he'd be a first round pick. But the problem is in like his second to last season, he was actually really good at, like, his strength was incredible. He was really good at playing the run. He was like a really heads up player. His last year comes around and he like cut down in weight, and then he became
I think
kind of
they
more of a
asked him.
speed bend guy. They asked him to.
Yeah, and
But
so,
then
like,
after the fact, now he's back up to 270. So it's
Right.
like, I don't even know what to do with him. But like
Right.
athletically, he's a really good player and he's like smart, but it's like I almost don't know what he's supposed to be because they've just made him like
you're
five
right.
different
You're
things.
exactly right about that. I think there's a few guys that I like putting in the first round. I think might end up there, and he's one of them. But like, you're right. I mean, teams may not know what to do with him. But yeah, he's not like 6'5", which I don't know. Maybe Pete Carroll wouldn't like that, but in terms of Leo, but they've gotten shorter guys before. I'm just kidding about that. But yeah, no, I exactly right. I have a hard time. Putting USC's to Pete guys to Pete Carroll and mock drafts. He never seems to pick them, even though you always want to put him right. He never seems to pick them. So, but I like Drake Jackson a lot. You're right though. It's a weird study on him.
Yeah,
it's been a few years since we really thought, oh yeah, Pete Carroll, the USC thing. That's like,
I'm old. What can I say? This is what
you're old. You're old. And Luke, we're getting closer to 2:00 here. So Luke Fortner is at a center.
Yeah, I think they could use line help just about anywhere, but I think, he's a guy who, not the strongest, but I think he's like really quick. He's really smart. I think he just understands how to play the position really well. He had like a better day against the Georgia guys than, a typical center should, which is like as best a thing as you can say against that front. The fact that he didn't just get killed every play is pretty impressive. Right. So I think by the time the third round rolls around, probably a good time to take him.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, we're going to move quickly to my picks, and I keep feeling attacked. I feel attacked on this podcast because Chad said they're not going to go out and get Sauce Gardner right away and punt on the quarterback. I feel as though they're going to punt on the quarterback this year. I feel like I'm alone in that, where they're coming in and saying, yeah, the whole idea is this is a rebuild. We got to restock elsewhere. Let's get some of our other needs. So putting Sauce Gardner out there, again, I mean, is this the Richard Sherman surrogate? It kind of is. Like we said earlier, Sidney Jones is back. Quadri Diggs is back. This secondary needs help. It needs help for years. They've got a very specific style of play, specific defensive structure there. I personally get the impression Sauce Gardner would fit in that structure, and I don't think that's a terrible reach at the 9th overall pick.
No, I mean, I think in that area.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. It would feel a lot like what the Broncos did last offseason with taking Surtain instead of, Fields, or I guess they could also take Jones. It feels very much like that if they were to take Sauce, where it's like, yeah, this is an awesome player. It fits exactly what you'd want to do. You also probably should have taken a quarterback.
Right.
Right. By the way, Joey Sucks did ask, based on what Derrick's choice there, wouldn't Fortner just get killed by Donald? Everybody.
I mean, but who doesn't? Like, I feel like that's an unfair barometer.
No, but it's a fair point, and that's something like guys like Tyler Lindenbaum and Cam Jurgens, some of these undersized centers, they're going to get asked that question, like, how are you going to deal? And you want undersized guys that are quick, right? You would think for a guy like Donald, but no, you got to be strong too. So yeah, Donald is not a guy that I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd take on Sam Darnold probably, but Aaron Donald I probably would not take on at all.
And that's it. Maybe Linderbaum, if that's your thought, that's the center that you would take, and maybe you take him 9th overall. Maybe he lands there now because like the Giants and some other teams have addressed it. But yeah, you can't go, well, in the 3rd round we're going to get a guy who's going to stymie Aaron Donald. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Speaking
of interior line, adding just a big, huge dude. Kenyon Green, I put him in there. That's your solution to let's beef up the interior line. And then right after that, I'm working with one of the commercial draft simulators to try and keep myself honest so I don't just pick guys, I'll pretend he dropped. John Dotson, slot specialist, speedy slot specialist for Penn State, was sitting there at 41. I think it's time for the Seattle Seahawks to embrace the idea that you need a 3rd wide receiver, whoever your quarterback is, to do the things that Percy Harvin did 12 years ago. This wasn't a big thought for them 12 years ago. They would take guys like this and put them in the slot and do reverses and stuff. I think Dotson would be an excellent choice in that role behind DK Metcalf and the other guy whose name is I'm completely
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett, yeah. Phenomenal receiver they've had for years.
See, that's perfect for Tyler Lockett because nobody ever remembers that dude ever, but he's a fantastic player. By the way,
most
John
forgettable
Dotson,
900 yards ever.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes.
Jahan Dotson is basically Paul Richardson, who they tried to pick in the second round. So, I mean, he's better than Paul Richardson because he catches the ball. He's phenomenal. I'm not equating them as talent, but because Richardson was totally overdrafted. Dotson will be in this 40 to 55 area somewhere because his hands are too good, even though he's not very big or physical. But his hands are just too good to let drop much further than that.
Right, and he can do some of the things Isaiah McKenzie was doing. We started this talking about free agency. Quietly signs a 1-year, $2 million contract or whatever, $4 million contract, and a guy that will just give you like 3 big plays a month.
Yeah,
in that kind of role, and that's what I could see Dotson do. Paul Richardson, you just short circuited me though. He had injury problems throughout his career.
Right,
was very, very lean. Just like scary lean,
and so is Dotson. But I'm saying that it would make sense for them to pick him because if they liked Richardson, they're going to love Dotson because he's a better player. So I wasn't attacking, not attacking.
But we're all trying to pick a little bit. We're trying to fill the grocery bag for Pete Carroll here. We're getting Bobby Wagner surrogates. We're getting Richard Sherman surrogates. But you liked this kind of guy in the past, and I saw Matt Corral as a possibility. For the same reasons you did, Chad, except that the mock draft simulator I had said he was still going to be there on the 3rd round. And so, you get a guy with a lot of juice. You get a guy with some leadership potential and with a different enough game from Russell Wilson that you move on. I think in my case here, it's a hedge bet. You take a year, you see if he can like get out of this Geno Drew Lock quagmire and demonstrate that he's the guy, which is a little bit what Russell Wilson did back in 2012. And if not, you still have all your assets for what a lot of us think is a stronger draft class for quarterbacks in 2023.
I can't look.
No. Yeah.
We say that now, right? But by like October, we're going to be like, none of these guys are any good. And then by March, it's like they're all 3rd round picks. And then by April, like Bryce Young, number 1. This is the cycle that we go through every year. And so I'll never say that. Just wait till next year to get your quarterback. Well.
We've been saying it's like free beer tomorrow, the sign at the bar. Free beer tomorrow.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And next year's quarterback class is loaded. This quarterback class reminds me so much of, 2013? It really does. It reminds me of 2013.
Oh, my God, no. Oh, my God. No. I can't disagree with you more. We can have another discussion about that.
Carson Strong
I can't disagree with you more.
Oh. Malik Willis is EJ Manuel.
Carson Strong is Mike Glennon. Oh, my God.
But in that draft, when EJ Manuel was taken in the middle of the 1st round, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But this year, Kenny Pickett is legit.
Okay.
Sam Howell is going to be a good quarterback, I think. And I think Malik Willis is going to fall into the same trap. People are falling into the same trap with him that they fell into with Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, all these other guys that are going to be playmakers, and they don't fit. So I will take Malik Willis any day of the week. I think that kid is going to be a playmaker, not week 1 of his rookie year, but he's going to be something. And I really believe that in my heart of hearts.
I do like Malik Willis as that projection guy, and I do like Kenny Pickett as a come in right away guy. The rest of them are 2013, in my opinion. But and I'm gonna have the last word, and we're almost out of time here. And thank you for joining us, Chad. Where can we find you?
Well, the last 2 years, you could find me right in my apartment, and that's about it. But if you're looking for my stuff, you go on NFL.com. I'll have a new mock draft out probably next week, not after free agency kind of winds down a little bit. New longer mock draft. And that's where my stuff will be, NFL.com. You can find me at Twitter at Chad_REUTER. And, jokes and nonsense and occasional football stuff on there as well.
Awesome. Derrik, what's on tap at Football Outsiders for Film Room?
I actually am probably skipping it this week, just some scheduled conflicts and stuff. But I will say, for the following week, it is going to be Malik Willis. So
it's going to be Malik Willis, and you will have a mock draft on tap for us sometime not too distant future, correct?
I will. I think the 21st or 22nd, so something around that range, where kind of like Chad, once free agency winds down here a little bit.
Yeah,
right. It is right around the corner. Derrik is going to come in and do a mock draft after, yes, most of the free agents smoke is cleared. so that we know, for example, hopefully by then where Deshaun Watson is, so you're not mocking Kenny Pickett to the wrong team.
Twice last year, the day we were going to put out a mock draft, there was a trade, like right at the same time we're going to put out the mock draft. So I had to redo the whole, that happened twice with Orlando Brown. And there was another, the draft pick trades that ended up being Waddle and those guys. So yeah, that's no fun when that happens.
That is brutal. And it's like, you can't not make the change. I think at Football Outsiders, we could quietly say, hey, Aaron, the server broke or something.
Yeah,
NFL.com, you can't do that. You can't get away with that stuff.
No.
So hopefully that does not happen to you. And, if we're still waiting on a Deshaun Watson trade when you're getting close to the deadline, let us know. And maybe I will go on your behalf and try to get that mock draft moved, Derrik, so you don't pull your hair out. But just a reminder to everybody listening and watching that Football Outsiders draft coverage is presented by Underdog Fantasy. And you can use the promo code FO40, that's FO40, at Underdog to double your deposit up to $100. Keep your eyes peeled for the new best ball tournaments that include 2022 rookies, their new Superflex games, and your chance to deploy your knowledge from mine and Chad Reuter and Derrik Klassen's NFL draft research and analysis. How'd I do, Chad?
Excellent.
Excellent. Links to Underdog Fantasy can be found in the description of this video below. So go play with us on Underdog today. On behalf of Chad Reuter, on behalf of Derrik Klassen, all the folks at Football Outsiders, thank you so much for watching and listening. And tune in next week for this show. And tune in on Thursday to see me and Aaron Schatz breaking down all the chaos of free agency at Football Outsiders.